This episode discusses historical disease outbreaks, quarantine practices, mass illness, and death, including how communities responded during epidemics. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi, I'm Lady Saelym.
And I'm Madam Omen.
Join us as we dive deeper into Galveston's history. Pirates and storms, true crime and tragedy.
And the lore and legends that were born from it.
We're not here to tell ghost stories. We're here to uncover where they started.
And what never fully let go. And who stayed behind.
Beyond the past, because history doesn't rest, and neither should you. Good evening, Madam Omen. Happy New Week. How have you been since part 1?
Oh my gosh, I am still haunted by those ships at anchor. Listener feedback has been wild. Everybody is waiting for the rest of this story.
Yay! That's what we want. Well, I've been a little haunted by the 1867 Flakes bulletin clippings. I'll bring them up later, but girl, they are heavy.
Oh my gosh.
Heavy.
I mean, everything about this time period is heavy. Let's just be real.
Yes, you're not wrong. It's a very dark time in history.
So tell me all about historic Galveston ghost tours. Have you been on any exciting adventures this week?
My gosh, yes, I have had quite a few this week. I've been able to do a history walking tour and a ghost tour, and I'm even learning the cemetery tour. So hopefully I'll be on my own soon for that one too. And hey, listeners, if you happen to be in Galveston, listen to the end of our show and get a special code, and maybe you can come have a tour with me. Anyway, Omen, are you ready to change over to the dark side of history?
So ready. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to Beyond the Past. Now, last week we were out on the water, eyes fixed on every arriving ship, anchoring the suspicious ones, building quarantine stations, and doing everything humanly possible to keep the invisible passenger offshore.
You know, it's so interesting. When you mentioned that we were going to talk about the invisible passenger, I'm thinking we're going to talk about ghosts, but that wasn't what was haunting the city at the time. It was yellow fever. So, you know, no wall was perfect when that invisible passenger traveled unseen. Tonight, we're going to cross that line and step onto the island into the fall of 1867 when the fever finally came home.
It's autumn now. The Civil War had just ended 2 years ago, and Galveston is swollen beyond anything it's known before. Union troops still occupy parts of the city. Freed people are arriving looking for work and a new start. Immigrants are coming onto the docks. Cotton is king again, bales stacked high along the strand. Streets buzz, the wharves are never quiet. The heat lingers. Mosquitoes breed in every puddle and barrel. One case slips the net. Maybe a sailor who seemed healthy enough to pass inspection. Maybe someone already incubating quietly. Then 2, then 10.
That's when the whispers start, right?
Right. But this becomes Galveston's deadliest epidemic ever. Over 1,100 confirmed dead, some records pushing it towards 1,200 in a city of barely 20,000 souls. Now, even Confederate Dick Dowling catches it and is gone within days.
One day you have a house full of voices, and the next, you've just got silence.
Yeah, and every morning the newspaper's delivered. It carries with it just this grim roll call. And who could look away? Now, I actually dove into these reports myself because I had to see what it was about. So I want you to picture opening the newspaper, and this was called the Flake Semi-Weekly Galveston Bulletin. The one I opened was on October 12th of 1867. It wasn't filled with shipping notices or advertisements. It was columns and columns of names in tight print. People were looking for those names for someone that they knew, because if they knew them, they could be next.
That's terrifying, just to even step into that time and step into these lives and just put yourself in their shoes. It's just a constant looming anxiety, and it's heartbreaking how ordinary it looks, like just a list of arrivals, except we're looking at departures from life.
Departure. Yes. Exactly. And the causes are listed next to each name. So I think that's what pulled me in deeper, because I just thought yellow fever. But through the papers, they actually describe different types of fevers. There was bilious fever and congestive fever, remittent, intermittent. It was very interesting.
Some of these I've never even heard of.
I mean, I guess it was the best doctors could do without the modern tools we have today, because they didn't have viral tests. They didn't even have the mosquito link yet, because that didn't come until 1900. So they named the symptoms by patterns, leaning on century-old ideas about humors and bad air.
Yeah, I mean, when we spoke about this last, the health officials then were still under the impression that this was being transmitted person to person. And so everybody's quarantining on these ships, trying to keep their illness away from the citizens and the workers of Galveston. And that just wasn't the case.
Here's just a few explanations of what each one of those fevers meant.
Bilious fever, when jaundice turned the skin yellow and the vomit bitter from a failing liver. Remittent, the fever would drop just enough to tease hope, then surge again. Intermittent, cyclical chills, burning heat, overlapping with malaria. Congestive fever, the brutal final stage, blood congesting in organs, black vomit, and rapid collapse.
Almost every single one pointed to the same culprit. It was yellow fever. It was just wearing a slightly different mask for each victim.
Right. And I mean, the biggest telltale sign, and unfortunately this would have been around the time that it's just too late, is that black vomit. That just sounds like something straight out of a horror movie.
When the fever peaked, the city changed its rhythm. Doors stayed closed, streets emptied. Death didn't wait for daylight or ceremony. Bodies were wrapped quickly, moved quickly, because heat, decay, and fear left no room for delay. In moments like that, ritual doesn't disappear. It simply gives way.
As we covered in episode 2, instead of coffins and ceremonies, we basically had temporary burial sites.
In the worst outbreaks, like the one in 1867, Galveston cemeteries couldn't keep up with the deaths. Old Cahill Cemetery, later part of what became known as the New City Cemetery, was set aside to bury hundreds of victims in a section still sometimes called the Yellow Fever Yard. Burials happened so rapidly that many graves were left unnamed or unmarked, especially for those who have family who fled or might have been too sick themselves to claim the dead. The scale of loss overwhelmed ceremony and record keeping, leaving countless victims without a known resting place.
Let's remember that those temporary graves stayed temporary until proof was also provided.
Markers were washed away or rotted. Families who fled never returned. Some were just dead themselves. Others starting over as far away as they could get. Now, let's fast forward to the 1870s.
The city knew at this point that holding these ships offshore in quarantine was no longer enough.
And when the fever took root inside, Galveston had to quarantine itself. The streets were patrolled, travel was halted, Fear spread outward too. Houston actually posted armed guards on the roads and rail lines, and they would turn back anybody who came from the island at gunpoint. Like, nope, you're not coming here.
And so now you've got neighbors pit against neighbors because fear truly has a way of bringing out the worst in people. And they still don't know what is causing this horrible sickness.
Science finally caught up. So in 1900, they finally proved that the mosquitoes were the true carrier.
Not person to person.
Not person to person.
So once that truth arrived, the old systems changed forever. No more guessing at bilious or congestive fevers. No more blaming miasmas rising from the marshes. The enemy had a name now. Cities could suddenly fight back in ways that Galveston's doctors wished that they could have done back in 1867. But those decades of uncertainty, they left their mark. The epidemics didn't just take lives, they reshaped how the city thought about death itself.
People still walk past those quiet sections of the cemeteries, grass growing over places where hundreds, maybe even thousands over the years lay in unmarked ground. Some plots had a single stone, a family name, a date. Others had nothing at all, just the knowledge passed down in whispers that this was the yellow fever yard.
I think about the families who fled and never came back. You know, the ones who survived, but they had that survivor's guilt of leaving the loved ones behind in those conditions. The immigrants whose only trace in Galveston is a line in a newspaper column. Unknown male, age 30, bilious fever. Those lists in the Flakes Bulletin, the Daily News, the Civilian, all of these newspapers, they were meant to inform, but they also became the only memorial that many ever received.
The city adapted in quieter ways too. Galveston learned to carry loss without always naming it, to walk past those grassy patches and still feel the weight.
That is resiliency. And I know I keep saying that, but that is the word that comes to mind when I hear these stories.
Galveston's greatest fear wasn't something that announced itself with thunder or wind. It was the silent arrival of the unseen, answered with watchful ships at anchor, columns of strange fever names in the cold newspaper. They shaped Galveston as deeply as any force of nature.
Some threats came without a warning, only becoming clear later in those yellowed newspapers listing names that we'll never know how to pronounce, in an unmarked ground that still remembers, and in the stories that we are still trying to reclaim. So, Lady Saelym, I have to ask, with all of your research that you've been doing on these, why do you think the lore survives?
If people were not claimed or the markers were eroded and now we don't know where they are, there's just so much unknown under what we see on the top layer. I just think that the lore grows out of curiosity of what those people must be feeling or thinking if they're still left behind.
That's why this story still doesn't feel settled. Because, I mean, some losses were never given the time to be mourned or grieved.
There's a lot of unfinished business going on. Next week on Beyond the Past, we turn to a true crime case that still holds the city in its arms.
A young woman whose story never loosened its grip on Galveston, and whose grave is still visited, still remembered, and still adorned with Mardi Gras beads more than a century later.
We'll tell you the story of Elizabeth Percival and explore why some victims are never truly left behind.
This has been Beyond the Past.
because history doesn't rest.
And neither should you.
Hey listeners, Lady Saelym here. I've recently joined Historic Galveston Ghost Tours as a guide. This company offers 7 different walking tours, so there really is something for everyone. From ghost walks on the Strand, to haunted homes, to historic cemeteries, to architecture, to island history, pub crawls, and Galveston's legendary red light district. So, if you're visiting Galveston, come take a walk with me or with one of our amazing guides who love the island as much as I do. And when you book online, make sure you use the code BEYONDTHEPAST to get $5 off your ticket. I will drop that in the description. Historic Galveston Ghost Tours. 7 ways to experience Galveston after dark.